it's kind of vloggy, kind of a history lesson with me. So if you're new, hey, for the past almost 7 years now, I've been doing especially top 10s and first impression videos on MMOs, and some of them have impressed me more than others. So yeah, the most impressive MMOs in terms of face value, hopefully this list will give you that. Now, if you're brand new to MMOs, I love saying that basically your first MMO is always going to be the most magical and best, but there are some MMOs that, for me personally, have given me a more impactful first impression than others, and to me, that is the magic of MMOs, is jumping into that new world and that feeling of discovery. So these are the games that gave me the biggest feeling of discovery, at least through my own personal career. And that's all I can do with these kind of reviews, is just let you know my bias, and hopefully, we line up or don't, so you can be aware of it, and from there, pick which games you want to get into. Regardless, hope you can get into something here. So, here's story time, basically. Let's do it. So this list is going to be chronological ordered, so it's not exactly like just the best game to get into right now, and it might not even really be the best, most impactful game for me personally, historically, but this was the first game that I played, and that was RuneScape. RuneScape was the first MMO that I ever experienced. It was dang near the first online game that I ever played. I played Halo 2, and I immediately got into Xbox and Halo, but RuneScape was right there on the tail of that, and what an experience that was. Joining on with my friends, playing, co-oping through a couple of different quests, and that's actually really the highlight of this game. Was like, yeah, it was my first MMO, but even till today, the questing is some of the most social, some of the most creative and funny and quick and witty stuff that you can really find anywhere. I think that really RuneScape quests are actually genuinely quests. Now, sometimes they don't seem so epic, like you might imagine the word quest to be, but each quest is its individually curated experience. It's not just a copy-paste, go here, kill 10 of this, etc. that you see from the EverQuest and era onward. No, each quest was its own little, almost like comic strip, if you can think about it. And the game almost looks like a diorama. So in a way, RuneScape is this really crazy 3D comic strip, in my opinion. And those quests are definitely the highlights of my first impressions of RuneScape. Now, you can actually play for free for quite a little bit. You get a nice little chunk of content, I believe. Now, nothing to the massivity of the rest of the game, but considering other games that you could buy for $5, indie titles or something like that, there's a lot of other RPGs or just other MMOs and their totality of content. Actually, the free-to-play of RuneScape ain't so bad. There is definitely a unique experience to have here. If you're fine with the graphics, if you can go in with nostalgia goggles, or RuneScape 3, or maybe the new mobile versions, I think you could still have a really epic first impressions if you give it a chance. All right, guys, now the next MMO that I really dived into, that really blew me away, was the pretty obvious World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft was something that I wanted so bad. I'm just going to tell you this. It's just a fun little childhood story where I didn't even have a computer yet. Straight up, did not have one. I grew up rather without means. And I bought the game because I worked a summer job. I bought the game first before I saved up for the rest of the summer to get a PC. So I had some bad e-machine. I played the game like it was a slideshow. But I had fun. I played a human paladin and I just rolled around and, to try to do some PvP at 2 FPS. But no, I had so much fun. I loved the open world PvP that was included with the PvE of the game, which back in the day, you could run out of resources while trying to, fight through the hordes of gnolls to get to Hogger, and then Hogger could kill you. You could be swarmed by Murlocs. I actually really genuinely enjoyed the overall difficulty and pacing of vanilla, and there definitely was some magic with that, with worrying, almost like a survival game, actually, with your resources, and then of course the PvP and the incentivization to PvP. So hopefully with Battle for Azeroth, we get that feeling once again. But yeah, my first impressions was holy crap, dude, this game plays so smooth, despite my FPS limitage. It was played so smooth, played it so openly, and it really just felt like a big old proper MMO, which even to this day, a lot of MMOs, AAA quality, even don't have that massivity, that openness, and that free-flowing combat. So a lot of surprising stuff. Now, WoW is a little dated now, but no, there's still something there. There's still something there, and there's still a reason why it's one of the most popular games ever. However, the reason why I was impressed back in the day, that had waned a lot, the open world PvEVP, but now it's coming back again with Battle for Azeroth. So with the new expansion, am I hype? Yeah, I'm going to be streaming it over at twitch.tv/Skylance, and hopefully, if you guys are coming in new or returning players, we can have a good first impressions with that. Okay, so now moving on through, we have a pretty big genre departure. This is not the first FPS MMO, but for many players, it was their first MMO FPS because it's a legitimate MMO, as in hundreds of players fighting together, open world, and actual FPS mechanics. And that's going to be Planet Side 2. I believe the very first one was World War II Online, which apparently is still running. I might need to check that out, but Planet Side 2 was the one that just really catapulted. I mean, it was really promoted. The trailers and the footage that was being shown was so sick. Now, they ended up having some degrades in graphics and some things kind of shifted, and I know the original Planet Side game, I really wanted to play that. I never could. But, you know, with PlanetSide 2, I finally had the means. I had a MacBook Pro, and I was at Full Sail University studying game design, and it was just such a cool idea to me, so I jumped in and I was like, oh my freaking god. Now, as a fan of Battlefield, yeah, I played like every Battlefield. I like big team battle games. I used to play big team battle in Halo a lot. I made Far Cry maps, big team battle Far Cry maps, and I just really enjoyed the idea of big team battle. So what's bigger than 16 or maybe 64 players? Oh, how about like basically countless in real-time gunfights with freaking giant gunships soaring through the air, these massive bases that you can siege. It was just so ridiculous. And the classes and the customization was also just really mind-blowing. There's just a lot of content that seems so out of reach for me. It just seemed like a game that was so intense that I was literally overwhelmed. I mean, now we can see that it's actually more or less kind of a bare bones FPS. I mean, it's not too ridiculous, other than the fact that the numbers are really high. But when it launched, it had so much potential. Now, a little bit of that was waned, definitely. The graphics have not held up, and the performance isn't as good as it should be, and a number of other factors, but regardless, when it was coming out, it was like, holy crap, a thing like this can even exist? What even? Whoa. So yeah, first impressions, it was amazing, and technically, there's not that many MMO shooters out there. We have Foxhole, debatably. There's some other survival server games that might kind of have shooting mechanics, but PlanetSide is still legitimately, genuinely one of the most unique MMO experiences that you can just jump in, play, and have a blast with. Alright guys, so the next game that really buttered my biscuits, I guess you could say, was Guild Wars 2. I thought that game was just really ridiculous. Now, when I first got in, like, day one, like, a lot of these first impressions are, like, my first week in the game. Guild Wars 2 was kind of a slow burner for me. Actually, I kind of accidentally bought it. I was trying to buy a new Battlefield game, and my card didn't work on it for some reason, and I was like, okay, well, let's see if it works on another site. And no, it worked, and I accidentally bought Guild Wars 2 day one. I wanted to play it anyways, but I wanted Battlefield more. Oh my god, I'm glad I made this decision, though, because Guild Wars 2, it was cool, I had fun with it, but really what set everything in motion for my love for Guild Wars 2 was when they started rolling out the Season 1 of the seasonal, you know, these little events, the time-gated events, especially like the Aetherite one was so amazing. The Halloween event, I think, was one of my first ones, and I just really loved the living story and how they tie that in with these timed events, and it was just so crazy. Now, actually, technically, I think Guild Wars 2 Season 1 was probably some of the best of Guild Wars. It was very limiting. The content wasn't as engrossing in ways. It wasn't as meaty. It wasn't as rich or just as much as it is now today that you can just jump in and play. But if you were playing on those days with the seasonal events, which Halloween does come around every once in a while, you know, the Christmas event does come around every once in a while, but man, there's some that you'll just never see again. There's some that was just limited time, and that was it. And it might have came around one more time, like the Aetherite one. Oh, dude, just ridiculous stuff. That first year of Guild Wars 2 was just some of the most epic MMO content ever. You know, your first time fighting the behemoth in the God-Lost Swamp, the first time fighting Tecatl, that stuff you can still go in and jam to, but those giant seasonal events. You remember the Marionette giant boss fight that took 3 raid wings? I don't know. Like, there's some things that is definitely lost to time, and in a way that kind of makes Guild Wars 2 and this video and its place in my memory very precious and special and kind of poetic, romantic, actually. All right, so before we get to our number one, I do have some honorable mentions. Now, these were games that gave me like a really cool first impression, but maybe I played them in early access and then they changed way too rapidly, way too quickly, so overall the gameplay loop was a little bit perverted. So that's gonna be something like Trove. I really liked Trove, and I put it in a ton of top 10 lists that first year I played it. Oh man, dude, I had so much fun. It was such a blast to see the game develop until it started going into a very greedy direction. It started becoming very easy in a lot of ways, and it just kind of became something that you would play, kind of a guilty pleasure, like, you know, eating a lot of candy or something, you know, just a handful of chocolate in your face. That's kind of what Trove became. But before, it was actually legitimately like a platformy kind of shooter action MMO, and there was some serious like difficulties to it with finding the dungeons, exploring the dungeons. But now the procedural generation is a lot easier and a lot cheesier, and overall the game is definitely way more money grubby, grindy, and honestly, I can't put it in top 10s anymore, and that transition happened very rapidly. But still, the first impressions and the first days of Trove, when it was in beta, was kind of freaking magic. The next game is going to be Albion Online. So this game is another that my first impressions was like, whoa. When I was playing in pre-alpha, it was this Ultima Online-inspired mobile game that was also going to be cross-platform with PC, and they very quickly were adding in these really mechanical, intensive, well, mechanics, very reminiscent of League of Legends. And so, like, the PvP was engrossing, you know, dueling in the cities was super cool. The PvE actually was really fun. I enjoyed it so much, and open world exploration really felt rewarding. Trying to go find your little nook and, you know, a little niche to kind of grind out and maybe gank and PvP, and the guilds were alive, and yeah, basically, the game was in forever beta, and through the beta, the game changed so radically. You know, just like Trove, we have this thing where my first impressions, sadly, were a little bit crushed, as they so very quickly were changing the game that betrayed the original concept, idea, and love that I had. But Albion Online now, even though it's a different game, is something that might maybe be worth getting back into. And you can still have a really crazy first impression, but like frankly, just like Trove, it just isn't as good objectively as a game, I think, in terms of creativity and in terms of the art of the game design as it was originally. All right, guys, so now for the number one, or, the most recent game that really blew my mind with first impressions, I think a lot of people would see this coming, and that's going to be Black Desert. So Black Desert is just a game that when we saw the trailers, all of us together were like, there is no way that the game is going to look like that it's going to play like that it's going to work at all. No, it did, actually. Now, it's not the exact game that we were thinking it would be. It's very arcade. It's very grindy. The gameplay loop is very repetitious. There is not much immersion, and there isn't much challenge. But I will say that the game used to be more challenging. There used to be more of an edge and a bite to the game back in the alpha when I played it. It has become casualized, and the gameplay loop is definitely Korean MMO-ish. But regardless, even if you play now, the first impressions is going to be, this is a gorgeous freaking game. Yes, it's arcade, but oh my god, does it move so fast. It is the fastest game out there, and the combat is the most explosive. Honestly, if you have good ping to the servers and you have a beast machine, Black Desert could be one of the best games that you ever play. And as an MMO, it definitely has some faults, but there's a lot of stuff that you can do in this game. It's not just rinse, repeat, grind, which a lot of people think so. It is still technically in ways a sandbox. There is some things that you can do. There are people who roleplay, and there's actually a community of people who dive into the story just a little bit. There is actual RPG mechanics that you can delve into a little bit with some builds here and there. The paper doll is really limiting. Like technically it's got a lot of features, but they're kind of shallow in a lot of ways. But if you combine it all together and you jump into the game for the first time and you just have like all this information bombarding your eyeballs, it can be overwhelming. But if you start to sift through it, the first impressions is epic. It was absolutely insane. Of course, as you play the game, you find out it's a little bit more shallow than you'd like it to be, but over time, maybe it can grow on you. I don't know. There's definitely some ups and downs, but my first impressions, for me personally, as an MMO veteran going into this game, I found it pretty comfortable. I found it really fun, very interesting, and the 1v1 PvP was actually pretty cool too. I know a lot of people, like Lazy Peon, loves the guild fights, so I don't know what kind of player you are, but technically, BDO has something for a couple of different kind of players. I'm not gonna say everyone, but there is a reason why it's so popular, despite how niche it really should be, is that it does try to cater to actually more than just a hardcore grinding audience, and there is just a little bit of love and attention here and there. You can just see graphically, there is definitely something there. You just might have to work for it just a little bit. So as somebody's first MMO ever, honestly, BDO could work. I think it's better for somebody's second or third MMO, but all in all, if you have patience, which is probably the case for any sandbox MMO, BDO is going to be a really cool experience. But actually, fun fact, I'm just going to end cap this here by saying this, is that BDO is probably more fun in the first month of gameplay than it will ever be ever again, because it's so repetitious and potentially shallow for a lot of players. So like, what I suggest is play it for a little bit. Don't pursue the grind, don't pursue the repetitious gameplay, don't pursue the daily lifestyle. Just play it, one and done it, and you'll have a great adventure. Well, it goes on sale like $5 all the time, and it's totally worth for that experience. Even if you end up not liking it, it's such a weird game, I think, for Western audiences that you'll leave with some memories. So yeah, that's what I gotta say about my experience with BDO. All right, guys, well, that's going to be it for my top 5 list of most impressive MMO when it comes to first impressions. I had fun with these games, obviously, but, I try to be really honest here with these little micro reviews. I try to describe the game a little bit, but I really try to come at it from the perspective of, the title, from the perspective of the top 10 list, which is first impressions. And what I can say now is today that a lot of these games, you can still be impressed, but, the magic of an MMO is always going to be that first impression, that feeling of discovery. And if you've been here, done that, if you played games like these, maybe you're not going to feel it. Maybe if you played Ultima, you're going to be really turned off by Albion. Maybe if you've played EverQuest, World of Warcraft is not going to have that same potency, etc., etc. But for me, these games were the ones that, after playing all these MMOs throughout the years, these are the ones that were kind of like my mile markers, and I still think that today they do something pretty cool, pretty great, and that's why all of them are actually generally doing pretty all right, and some of them are freaking huge and popular and ever growing. So I definitely have to say I'm going to give at least 1 thumbs up to every game on this list to try even today. But historically, this was my experience with MMOs, and these are the ones that were really impactful to me as a player, as a content creator, as a person, actually. Yeah, I had fun.